the National Roundtable Conference on Green Hydrogen, Opportunities and Challenges, which is organized jointly by the National Solar Energy Federation of India and the Hydrogen Association of India. First of all, I would like to start by asking, am I audible? We have been through all these Am I Audibles for the last 2 years, and it feels very good to see and meet all of you in person. For that, I would like to ask all of you to give a round of applause for all of us for being able to make it to this event in person. Without much ado, I would like to start today's session. We have a stellar line of panels and panelists who have been part of everything that is hydrogen in India, spanning the last 7 decades in the history of our country, where hydrogen has been an integral part of it. So without much delay, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the first panelist on the stage. It's my distinct pleasure and privilege to invite Dr. Anil Kakotkar, former Chairman, Atomic Energy Commission of India, and former Director BARC, to join us on the stage. Dr. Kakotkar doesn't need any introduction. He has been a key contributor for India's strategic program in many fronts related to energy, and we are very happy and blessed to have him here. We also have with us Shri S.M. Vaidya from the CMD of Indian Oil, who has joined us today on this occasion. Sir, please. We are also virtually joined by Dr. Ajay Mathur, the Director General of International Solar Alliance, who will be delivering his message via video very soon. I would also like to request Dr. R.K. Malhotra, the President of Hydrogen Association of India, to join us on the stage. Mr. B.C. Tripathi, former Chairman GAIL, to join us on the stage. Mr. Pashupati Gopalan, Co-Chairman and CEO Sun Edison, to join us on the stage. And Mr. Rajat Seksaria, CEO Acme Cleantech Solution, to join us on stage. Finally, it's my distinct pleasure to invite Sri Pranav Mehta, Chairman of National Solar Energy Federation, to join us on the stage. At the outset, it is very important for us to understand today, India is at a very strategic juncture in its renewable energy journey and in our fight against climate change. As we speak, India has touched 150 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel energy installed capacity, out of which 50 gigawatt alone comes from solar energy. So when you're talking about anything green, it is imperative to talk about solar energy. But that's not about it. There is a common denominator for today's event. Someone who started Hydrogen Association of India, the 2 people who started Hydrogen Association of India, and also the same people who started National Solar Energy Federation of India are on stage today. So without much delay, I would like to request Mr. Pranav Mehta, who is the co-founder and the initial founding member of Green Hydrogen Association of India, and also the founder chairman of National Solar Energy Federation of India, to kindly deliver the welcome remarks. We also have Mr. Erik Solheim, former Minister of Norway, former Executive Director of UNEP, today with us. I would request him to join us on the stage.
Good afternoon, friends. It gives me great pleasure to see you all and also the participation in terms of star. Aye Kapoor Sahab, welcome. So the star-studded speakers, not only from the government, but industry as well, on this nationally and internationally important subject of green hydrogen. Green hydrogen, as we all know, is going to be a game changer. It has its own challenges to overcome. It has its own potential to change the energy scenario in its own way. But before I say anything on that, important is to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Anil Kakotkar, whose contribution in the atomic energy, nuclear energy is quite well known. So, on the energy scenario, we couldn't have a better person, along with Dr. V.K. Saraswat and Dr. Anil Kakotkar. Dr. Saraswat, who is expected any time, as you know, he was earlier the DRDO chief, and now he is heading Niti Aayog. At the and you know, Niti Aayog member energy has the Minister of State status, and all the government concerned departments always go and give him the feedback, report, etc. And we are privileged that he is going to be with us this evening, as in when he joins in later on. Along with that, I am so happy both in panelists as well as in the audience, we have the industry representatives present here. Because I always say that government alone cannot do everything. It is our industry which joins hand with the government to implement the national plans, to arrive the targets and all that. It is the industry who takes the risk, who brings the technology, who gives employment. So I am so happy that our leading trustee members, like ECME, like Axis, all are present here. And to add to all this, Axis is our platinum sponsor, but to add to all this, we have Mr. S.M. Vaidya present here from Indian Oil, and they are the gold sponsors. But more than being gold sponsor, his mere presence here is of great significance to me, that we are the hydrogen or solar people and they are the carbon people, so to say. But at the same time, energy. Yeah, we are all together in the energy field. I agree with you entirely. But Indian Oil in particular, through Dr. Malhotra, I was associated in founding this Hydrogen Association. When I was CNG advisor to Gujarat government, when Mr. Modi was the chief minister, and when this idea came of blending hydrogen in the natural gas pipeline, CNG, we were the initial initiators of the idea, in which Indian Oil, of course, was playing a major role. And they had established at Faridabad the hydrogen fueling station. There was a hydrogen car also, which way back in 2006 we formed this. And I'm so happy to be again associated when the color for the hydrogen has changed. But the old color has not gone back. So let us remember that the way we say that we cannot do without coal as far as India is concerned, for at least quite some time to come, the way the other colors also we have to look at, but that is not the subject today. The subject, of course, is green hydrogen. I would like to name all the companies who are present here, who are our members in a big way. Some of whom, through the LED slides, my suggestion is when this is going on, kindly see the LED slides also, where our leading people have said something, done something, said something or the other on green hydrogen. That shows the alertness, about this, I call it still a future fuel. I am not calling it a fuel of today. So, whilst doing that, let me say 2-3 things. Number one, that hydrogen, green hydrogen, is not the panacea for all our energy needs. It is one of the important potential sources. Its role has been estimated worldwide as 12% in the energy mix. When we go for that 100% RE dream that we have by 2050, I am talking of the world. In India also, India has a great potential for hydrogen. We want to make it what you call export hub and all that. And all big companies, Reliance and Adani and all our companies, Acme, Axis, etc., are there. But challenges remain. One of the biggest challenges is electrolyzer. Electrolyzer manufacturing, electrolyzer cost, efficiency of electrolyzer. So that is why we have given the subject as challenges and opportunities. Where the use will be there, where green hydrogen will be there, what kind of planning we should do. Whether, I am also saying in some of the slides also you will see, that whether green hydrogen, though important, has been overhyped. These are some of the questions that we should answer. And unless, again, when we started solar, our aim was cost reduction, where again the industry and government, we all played the role together. And it is that cost reduction which has helped us in dreaming about green hydrogen. If that cost reduction would not have been achieved, we cannot dream of green hydrogen. So we have to ponder over all these issues. And having said all this, may I hand over to Dr. Anil Kakotkar to go on further in this particular session. Before I do that, I must acknowledge the presence of Mr. Tarun Kapoor, our beloved and honorable Mr. Tarun Kapoor. I don't know whether to call him solar man or whether to call him petroleum man, because he was there when solar mission was there, our national solar mission. And we all have benefited from, largeness of his heart, his being very particular, encouraging, and all that. In our initial years of National Solar Energy Federation of India, also we used to interact with him quite often. And then he has now come through the Petroleum Ministry Secretary. So I am indeed very happy to welcome Mr. Tarun Kapoor. Also, Mr. Rajat Seksaria, I have already mentioned, and all the speakers on the dais, welcome, and we'll proceed further. And when my turn comes, or when Dr. Saraswat comes, maybe I will have to give part 2 of my welcome address. Thank you.
We get on to the session. Thank you, Mr. Mehta. My name is R.K. Malhotra. I am the president of the Hydrogen Association of India. I was earlier with Indian Oil as director R&D and retired as acting chairman also. Now I'm adjunct professor of practice at IIT Delhi as well. So thank you, gentlemen and ladies who are here with us. Thanks all the panelists who have agreed to join. I've been given the task of moderating this session. Thank you. I don't know. Will have to do anything because we have illustrious personality like Dr. Anil Kakotkar to chair. But just to give, besides the welcome, I would like to say that this hydrogen issue, he mentioned that Indian Oil, we started talking about hydrogen and had set up a hydrogen dispensing station way back in 2006 and started some hydrogen CNG at that time. But now everybody is talking about hydrogen. But that perhaps is not enough. We have to walk the talk. Then only things will happen around hydrogen. Our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji has committed at COP26 a lot of ambitious targets of 50% energy coming from renewables, carbon intensity to reduce, so on and so forth. And hydrogen for decarbonization of the various economic sectors will play a very, very important role. And as Mr. Mehta already said, that green hydrogen, I don't know whether it is overhyped, but I personally feel that green hydrogen will have to piggyback on blue hydrogen also, whether it comes from natural gas, or whether it comes even in India from coal. But ultimately, the green hydrogen will take over. The green hydrogen is really required if we have to decarbonize. So with these few words, once again, I welcome all of you to this session. We'll have 5 minutes each from every speaker in this, because we have constraint of time. And to start with, I'll request Dr. Anil Kakotkarji to give his opening remarks, and then each and every speaker I'll call up for 5 minutes each, their observation. You can do it from there as well. Yeah. As convenient.
Well, good afternoon to all of you. Distinguished fellow panelists and distinguished members of audience. Subject of green hydrogen, as has been said, hydrogen has been changing colors, and probably all colors may have to coexist at least for quite some time. But today we are here to brainstorm on taking stock of where we are, where we have to go, and what is the transition or the route to transition that we expect in India. So I think all colleagues on the panel will all very quickly share our thoughts within a period of 5 minutes. And then we'll also have a discussion coming from audience, and then organizers will sort of derive a right sense out of all that discussion, and that will be the output of this panel.
So we have Dr. Ajay Mathur's recorded message.
Yeah.
Can we play that?
Sorry?
Dr. Ajay Mathur,
He's there?
recorded
His recorded message is there.
video speech.
So you want to do that now?
They are playing. Yeah, he's the first one. Yeah.
I thought let me finish some initial remarks and then. Yeah. So let me make some quick observations, and that will also help members to sort of add their comment on those points in addition to whatever they have to say. Now, first point that I wish to make is, we talked about these colors, and I think that there is an issue about generation side of hydrogen. There is also an issue about the use side of so supply side and demand side. And I think demand side development of infrastructure is identical regardless of the color of hydrogen. So the first point that we should recognize is we should get going with that infrastructure because it takes time. And without bothering too much about the color, the demand side, infrastructure, business, everything, I think should get going, leveraging whatever color of hydrogen that is available at a competitive cost. Number two, similar to this transition, the crucial issue is the cost of production of hydrogen or cost of production of green hydrogen. And that is technology dependent, and technologies are at this moment at different stages of development. So the cheapest hydrogen that we can get today is not necessarily or it's not likely to remain cheapest for all time to come, because there is an energy cost in production of hydrogen, and we know that that energy cost would change. For example, electrolysis, shifting to steam electrolysis would mean a difference to energy cost. Or for that matter, instead of electrolysis, shifting to the thermochemical splitting of water, that will make a difference to energy cost. Now, these technologies are going to be available uh, progressively in time, and the question is uh, how induction of these technologies would happen when already some of the more expensive technologies already get rooted into the commercial world. And that's a challenge which both the governments and the business have to cope up, in my view. But the fact is, just like there is going to be this transition of hydrogen color at the user end, there is going to be a transition in the way we produce hydrogen as we move forward. Because somewhere I also read that ultimately production of hydrogen, the capital investment on equipment is actually a much smaller part compared to the running cost in terms of energy that you have to deliver. So even if a new technology appears more expensive, uh, it will pay off very quickly. And I think we should be aware that we will have this transition taking place. The last point that I wish to make here is, in my assessment, and these are purely my assessment, but the share of electricity, which today we talk about around 20% plus minus something, that would go up. That would go up depending on what is the role hydrogen would play and what is the way hydrogen would be produced. For example, big driver for that growth is e-mobility. Now, along with electric mobility, there is hydrogen-based e-mobility. And then you require hydrogen in industry. Now, you produce that hydrogen through electrolyzers, and that remains to be the only technology. One can imagine that the share of hydrogen in total electricity system could be as high as 80% or even more, up from 20% now. So we have to enhance our energy to raise the quality of life. So we might go up by 4 times or so. And then we have to enhance the share of electricity in the total mix. So that may again go up multiple times. And then the electricity business is going to be unprecedentedly high. And how the grids will be managed and all, I think it's a matter, though not directly connected with hydrogen, but it's a matter which will affect hydrogen in a big way if that is not thought through. So my ballpark estimates are that we will require something like 28,000 terawatt hours per year. That is the kind of energy India would require in equilibrium. It may take several decades to reach that equilibrium. And to deliver that energy, we will have to deliver something like 15,000 terawatt hours of that energy in the form of hydrogen. 10,000 terawatt hours, this is I'm saying delivery to users. 10,000 terawatt hours to be delivered to users as electricity, around 2,500 terawatt hours to be delivered to users through bioenergy, and there may be shortfall in any one of them, and plus whatever is remaining. All that has to be made good by using fossil energy and then adopting carbon capture and utilization, or carbon capture, utilization and sequestration. So friends, that's the dimension of a challenge before us, and I thought it would be good for us to debate on this, and so I thought I'll make this. So I'll come back at the end if there is time. So I would request Dr. Malhotra to call one by one whom. Yeah. Dr. Ajay Mathur, I think, is coming online, so it's a recorded message.
Saraswat Sahab, my dear friend Mr. Pranav Mehta, Shri Chaturvedi, Dr. Kakotkar, Eric, Tarun, friends. I apologize for not being here with you today, but I do want to share my thoughts on this very important subject of how do we enable the hydrogen transition in the country. I first of all want to express my thanks for the leadership that has been shown in this area by a variety of government organizations led by the Prime Minister, by Mr. Saraswat personally, by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, all in all, enabling the and facilitating the move towards the use of hydrogen in our economy. This is important because today we use approximately 500 million tons of oil equivalent worth of heat energy in our system. There's another 500 million tons oil equivalent of energy that goes towards the manufacturing of electricity. So if we only look at replacing the energy that is used for heating purposes by hydrogen, we still would need about 500 million tons oil equivalent worth of energy today. This is a huge challenge. This is a challenge in terms of electricity, because today approximately 50 to 55 kilowatt hours of electricity is used to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. This is large. This implies that the amount of electricity that we would need to electrolyze enough water to produce the amount of hydrogen that we need would be roughly 6 or 7 times the amount of electricity that we produce today. On the other hand, while a lot of concern has been expressed on the amount of water that is used, that water is roughly 1%. The amount of water used to produce 500 million tons oil equivalent worth of hydrogen would be approximately 1% of the water that is used in agriculture. It becomes important for our country, therefore, to focus on ways in which the amount of electricity used to produce hydrogen reduces. In other words, enhancing the efficiency of electrolyzers becomes extremely important. We are today working with electrolyzers which have efficiencies in the vicinity of 75 to 79%. If we move to efficiencies which are closer to 90%, the amount of electricity that we need would drop substantially. We would therefore need, not only India, but the globe would need to create a demand for more efficient electrolyzers. This can be done through creating the demand in areas like steel, but also in areas where you need high temperature heat, for example, furnaces. For example, in the heating of various petrochemical distillation processes. It will be good if this connectivity is created right in the beginning, so that the demand for hydrogen is used to create the efficiency gains that go with it. In very simple terms, this would then help in managing the amount of electricity and therefore, in my view, solar electricity that would be needed for the production of this hydrogen. We already are at a time and space where globally the amount of solar electricity that has to be developed to meet the needs of countries where there is a huge amount of sun, we are already hitting against limits on the available land that is there. Consequently, enhancing the amount of efficiency of electrolyzers becomes important from the point of view of the electrolyzer technology and economics themselves, but also from the point of view of the land availability for the production of solar electricity, which could be used in the electrolysis of water. As we move ahead, issues related to the efficiency and also the reducing the cost of electrolyzers is important. Equally important is how do we ensure that electrolyzers can use solar electricity most efficiently, which means can we create electrolyzers that are cost effective when you work them during daylight hours when solar electricity is available without resorting to storage and therefore the need to see that they can work 24 hours a day. I believe that this is a question that still needs to be answered. We also need to answer other questions, particularly on the demand side. What are the key areas where hydrogen can be used? Where can it be used cost effectively today? There is a very strong feeling that everywhere where petroleum products are used for electricity generation are areas in which hydrogen can be used today. And we also therefore need to understand how do we create the cascade of increasing volumes and decreasing prices so that by 2030 or so we can reach a price goal of approximately $2 per kg of hydrogen, down from the current cost of approximately $5. As an incentive, we also need to look at the taxation structure on hydrogen and on the equipment required to produce hydrogen. A colleague of mine carried out an analysis in which GST exemption was the single largest source of cost reduction in the production of hydrogen today, without taking increasing efficiencies over time or decreasing costs over time as an issue. This is important as we move ahead and try to create a market for hydrogen. I am again apologize for not being here with you in person, but do look forward to the discussions that you have so that we can move ahead in a manner that makes sense for the world and for the various users of energy as well. Thank you very, very much.
So Eric Solomon is the chair of the Green Hydrogen Development Plan, Green Hydrogen Organization of Switzerland.
Good afternoon, friends. Namaste. I'm so pleased to be here in Delhi. We have had some enormously exciting days with business and with government leaders. There's so much going on in India these days, so it inspires everyone coming here to see it. Let me start with a story. A few years back, I was in Kochi in Kerala. As you know, they have started the first all-solar airport in the world, and I came from the United Nations to give them the prize for this solar airport because these are great environmentalists. Then I figured out that no, these guys didn't start this airport because they were environmentalists. They just looked into the balance sheet and figured out that the cheapest energy they could get in the state of Kerala, that was solar energy. So they started employing solar energy at the airport. And then, of course, the entire world said, I mean, this is fantastic. You are great green people. And then they became great green people. But this story illustrates a very central point. The old idea that either you go green or you take care of development, that's so much the 20th century. 21st century is about win-win, how we create jobs for all the millions of Indians who need jobs, while at the same time take care of Mother Earth. And that's why we're here. And that's why these economists at Kerala or Kochi Airport became green warriors. I will share with you what I see as the three most important global trends informing what we are doing here, because you are the specialists on the technologies, I'm not. The first trend is we are living in Asia's century. 19th century was Europe's century, and you were suffering in India from that. 20th century was America's century. This century is Asia's century. Predictions for the world economy in 2050 put China as by far the biggest economy in the world. It puts India and the United States on a combined silver medal as the second biggest economy in the world. And the fourth biggest economy is not Germany, it's Indonesia. So 3 out of the 4 biggest economies in the world are the 3 biggest Asian nations, and they're surging ahead. India's prospected to have 9% economic growth this year. Chinese growth will be lower, but it's still substantial. And you see Asia going forward at rapid speed. Why? I believe mainly because Asia has the right combination of great political leadership. You need an active state. I mean, look to all those economies we develop fast. Singapore, South Korea, China, Vietnam, all of them have a strong political leadership and an active state. And India has that in Prime Minister Modi and the present BJP government. But secondly, you must have a market. You must have dynamic business, because no state-dominated economy has been successful up to this point in human history. But this combination of visionary politics in the case of Prime Minister Modi and dynamic business, meaning you, well, that is a winning formula. And frankly, Europeans and Americans need to get up early in the morning to compete with you in the 21st century. And then I'm speaking about a friendly competition in business. But if the Americans and the Europeans are not getting up early, you will wipe them out in economic terms. Secondly, the 21st century is about the win-wins. The old debate in India was, I've been a visitor to India basically every year for the last 25 years. The old debate was always, do we want to develop in India, or do we want to take care of Mother Earth? And then 99% of Indians said we want to develop, because getting out of poverty, getting into prosperity, bringing everyone into the middle class and providing education and health is the most important. But that again, that was the old idea. The 21st century is about the win-wins, how we provide economic and ecological move ahead with the same policies, and we have all these policies. The old model is defunct. The old model was, first you prioritize only economics, you pollute enormously like mad, but when you become rich, you start cleaning up the problems you have caused. That was the old model. Those are the Brits, the Germans, the Americans, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese did. But now the new model is possible. You go forward very, very rapidly into the middle class and providing economic growth, but you base it on solar and wind and renewables. And solar energy in India today is the cheapest energy in the world. Not only that, it's the cheapest energy which has ever existed on planet Earth any place. So the opportunity for the win-wins are formidable, and we should grasp them. And the third global trend is we need energy security. The COVID told us that, yes, we want globalization, but we must secure the supply chains, otherwise we can get into trouble. And of course, the present Ukrainian crisis is exactly the same. Nations and regions do not want to be dependent on others. They want to be energy secure. And India, of course, is using enormous part of its budget, importing oil, importing gas, financing development in other parts of the world. It's a waste of Indian money, but it's of course also making India insecure in the face of a crisis. How can India be energy secure? Only if development is based on Indian resources, and the Indian resources is the sun, the wind, and the green hydrogen. And moving fast ahead on this will save enormous amounts of money for India, but it will also provide for energy security at a time where that is the political demand everywhere in the world. And when you combine these three mega trends, the Asian century, the win-win century, and emphasis on energy security, you have a fantastically important case for developing your industries here in India. Finally, I'm come here on behalf of World Green Hydrogen Organization. Our CEO, Jonas Moberg, will present the institution later, but we have come here because we want to learn from India, because we want to tell the rest of the world what's going on in India. The 2-page document by the government setting out the green hydrogen strategy for India and the engagement of Prime Minister Modi is enormously inspiring to the world, but the dynamism of India in this business, we want to present this to the world. And we want to look into, can we find general standards together? Can we solve safety issues in the green hydrogen business together? And can we make the leap together from the enormous positive potential in the future? From today's situation, you need some security on future prices and markets. But all these we can solve together, and that's what we want to achieve. Sometimes, finally, my children ask me, how was the life before the mobile phone? They cannot even think of that life. But it was some kind of life that also, before the computer. Very soon, our children and grandchildren will ask, how was the life when you were completely dependent on fossil fuels? Because solar and wind and green hydrogen will be such a part of the daily life of every human on planet Earth, they can't even think of the life before that. Thank you so much, and please continue your fantastic work.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eric. Now, may I invite Mr. Tarun Kapoor. He is the former Secretary Minister of Petroleum, and he's looking after the energy transition in the oil and gas sector. May I request you, sir, for your report.
Good afternoon, Dr. Kakotkar, panelists, and all the participants. Hydrogen, we have great hopes from hydrogen, certainly, and India is looking forward to the price of hydrogen coming down to $1. That's what the world is talking about. And we are also looking at the transportation and the storage problems getting solved. So let me look at the scenario, say in the future, what could be the situation. Dr. Kakotkar also mentioned about that. So while Dr. Kakotkar talked about 80%, generally what I've been hearing is that electricity through the grid could become, say, 50% of the final energy. And if that happens and we are able to push more and more renewables into the grid, so I think that would be the easier part to handle. The difficult part would be what is left out, the other 50%. And so far also, renewable energy penetration in the grid has gone to, say, 13%, 14% world, India approximately similar. But two areas where the penetration has been very low, one is transport and the other is cooking. And now hydrogen could play a major role in both of these. In transport, the way I look at the future of the country is that two-wheelers would go electric. That one can see. The four-wheeler, the passenger vehicle, I think in India would go more towards ethanol blended petrol. There would be EV also, but then it depends also on how the battery behaves. Does the price come down? Can we expect something very revolutionary? But then parallelly, the biofuel story is also going to be good. So that's going to be a good maybe alternative, and both could work. But on the heavy vehicle side, a replacement of diesel, CNG, again, natural gas could be transition fuel. It cannot be the ultimate thing. So on heavy transport, then look at industry, look at cement industry, look at steel industry, again, big requirement of energy. So these, to my mind, heavy transport, and then for industry, we don't have a solution, and hydrogen could be the solution. So which means that if what the world is trying to achieve to bring down the cost and solve all the problems around storage and transport, if that happens, then hydrogen could be the answer. and if it is coming down to $1 with energy density about 2.2 times the energy density of natural gas, so then we are there. Then probably it solves the problem. Now, immediately, what do we need to do in India? Immediately, uh, we are talking of green hydrogen coming in a big way in areas where hydrogen is already being used, so refineries or maybe in fertilizer or in certain sectors, and also blending in natural gas. When we talk of replacing the currently used gray hydrogen with green hydrogen, that appears a little easier, because while gray hydrogen may be at, say, 90 rupees or 100 rupees or 120 rupees, this is $5 and all. So still we are closer. But if we want to use hydrogen directly as fuel, then probably we are a little bit far. But then we also don't want to replace the or shut down the existing infrastructure. We would like to get it into new rather than producing, say, gray hydrogen, we will produce green hydrogen. But shutting down whatever facilities we have to produce gray hydrogen may probably be not be the right answer. So that's why now there's a lot of pressure on Mr. Vaidya here, because refineries could be the immediate movers, but then not at a loss. Already fuel price is going up, so can't be done at a by adding to the price of fuel for the end user. But then at least in new refineries this could happen. So what we are looking for is immediately big volumes coming into the country, so that we have green hydrogen production taking place to create a demand. That's what we did in solar, and that's what is required to be done as far as hydrogen is concerned. And blending could be one good immediate thing. And one experiment was tried out again by IOCL and by IGL, and 18% by volume and 2.2% by weight blending was done, and it was done successfully. But now there are 3-4 experiments which are being planned by the oil sector companies. GAIL is going to do one a pilot, then HPCL is planning a pilot, BPCL and IOC all are planning to do some pilots. But then blending, what is being planned by GAIL is blending at 2% by volume, which is not much, but then that is something which is considered absolutely safe in the current pipeline. So that would be a good beginning. But if we can, because see, India is coming up with full gas pipeline infrastructure in the country, so trunk pipelines, distribution network, everything. So we have to use the infrastructure which is available. And if we have to use the infrastructure which is available, then blending probably becomes the best answer. So if we can gradually keep increasing the blending percentage, then large quantities of hydrogen would get consumed. But then the price has to be right, which may happen in about, say, 10 years or so. And if we do blending, then wherever natural gas is used, hydrogen will get used, and percentage can gradually keep going up. Transportation of hydrogen through separate pipelines is being now done in Europe, and it may happen in India also. If we want to use hydrogen in a big way for industry or for various purposes, then we'll have to do separate pipelines also. And probably we may have to do a few pilots again, because production of hydrogen will take place only where solar energy is available in abundance, and we are able to store solar energy also, because we'll have to do round the clock supply. And the definition of the international definition of green hydrogen does not recognize banking. So if you produce hydrogen by banking, then it's not considered green internationally. Though the policy which came out recently, Power Ministry brought out a policy. They have said that even with banking, it's green. But then finally, I think we'll have to follow the international definition. So which means that storage then would become important. And if we can do that, if we can bring down the price of round the clock renewable power to, say, even 4 rupees, and bring down the cost of electrolyzer also to a reasonable level, then I think at least $2 is possible. And going forward, maybe when more innovation does happen, then maybe $1 may also be possible. But then immediately we are looking at volumes coming in from refineries or from maybe fertilizer. Green ammonia is an immediate thing. Green ammonia can happen tomorrow. That's not a problem at all, and immediately green ammonia can give volumes. And going forward, then the refineries and various industries can give volumes, and we can look forward to India becoming a leader in hydrogen production and even export of green ammonia. So that could be the pathway. And looking at say 2050, we if whatever has been planned does happen, then we do see hydrogen playing a very major role. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Having you have rightly said that gas and hydrogen can be used in pipelines, and otherwise transportation system, storage, etc. is also a challenge where we will have to develop these systems in India for type 4 cylinders, etc. May I now request IUC Chairman, Mr. Vaidya, to share his thoughts.
Dr. Anil Kakodkar ji, Mr. Tarun Kapoor, seeing him after a long time, and the distinguished panel here, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just like to give you some current figures of how the country is moving ahead. We have already exceeded the pre-COVID petroleum demand. 15% for gasoline. Even for diesel, it has gone up by 3%. LPG, it has gone up by a staggering 18%. And aviation, well, we have already reached about 80%, and with the international flights opening up very shortly, I think we'll touch 100% even for aviation. And I'm sure all of you must be remembering that just when the first wave of COVID had hit, everybody had written the obituary for oil. They said, we have all seen the peak demand. 99.8 million barrels was the demand then, and everybody said, well, oil is on the way out, now it's going to be all green. I'm not trying to throw a spanner in this conference, but I'm just trying to show that how things will really pan out. And today it is said that we will reach as a country about 108 million barrels, as a planet, 108 million barrels of oil in about 10 years from now. So the peak oil demand is still yet to come. And this is going to come, and Asia and China, as has been said, will be the major centers for this demand. For the simple reason is that today the per capita energy consumption of India is just 1/3 of the global average, just 1/3. And India is an aspirational economy. We intend to reach 5 trillion by 25 and 10 trillion by 2030. And energy is the key index by which the country is going to grow. So the country needs affordable energy, it needs reliable energy, and that can come if all the forms of energy come together. So I would like to look at this conference today, not as green hydrogen, but as an energy transition, how the country is going to go forward. See, the path of energy transition of Europe or USA is totally different than that for India. India is totally a different way, and I can't compare what is happening in Europe and US, because US and Europe, the primary energy demand is going down by way of efficiency and other things. But India, it is growing at a rate of 3.5% per annum. So I think this ground reality has to be very clearly understood when we talk of the energy transition. Energy transition cannot be pushed down. You cannot push 2050 in 2022. Energy transition has to be gradual. Because as I told you, when we started saying that the oil peak demand has gone, many of the companies, they stopped their investment plans in the upstream sector. And today we are seeing the effect of that. Today oil is actually hitting the roof. I'm not saying because of the current political instability, even otherwise. The oil prices were high because there is a supply crunch now. Please understand. Because today the investments had gone down, and for the upstream industry, which is taking its own time, it takes about 10 to 12 years before an investment actually fructifies. So any drop in investment will be disastrous for the energy security of the country, especially for a country like India, which is predominantly dependent upon foreign sources of supply of crude and gas. So that makes it more important that we have our own way of supplying the energy security. And hydrogen is certainly the way forward. And as Dr. Kakodkar said, let's not worry more about the color of hydrogen now. let's start using hydrogen, because let it be gray, let it be blue, let it be green. Because eventually I believe that all forms of hydrogen will coexist. And I beg to differ with Tarun Kapoorji that I say that gas will always be there. Gas is not just the transition fuel, it is also a destination fuel to some extent. So, gas as a destination fuel with carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and the other forms of energy will make up the energy pie for this country, which is extremely important. Now, coming down to electron versus molecule. I mean, who will going to rule? Electron, I mean the green electricity. But as everybody has said, all the forms of human activity cannot be done by electricity. So electron cannot alone take up the load. It has to join hands with the molecule. And that molecule will be hydrogen molecule. So once I think about 30-35% will be the molecule part, 60-65% will be the electron part. That is the way the country will see net zero, as our Prime Minister has promised, in 2070. But then that's a long way away, and we need to plan that in a very calibrated manner. Energy transition cannot be hastened. Energy transition will have its own time to take, but we will reach there. And as Indian Oil, we firmly believe that we need to break the chicken and egg story. So we are putting up, as Secretary Petroleum Tarun Kapoorji said, that the refiners are big consumers of bulk hydrogen for the desulfurization process. So we have decided that 10% of Mathura refinery hydrogen, which is currently gray, will make it green. I mean, that's a big statement, because in a couple of years from now, because Mathura refinery also happens to be in the Taj trapezium zone, so it makes all the more sense to go for green hydrogen there, and about a 15 megawatt plant at Panipat. So Mathura will be 40 megawatt and Panipat is 15. So we are making our steps in this direction. And green hydrogen initiative can only succeed if there are policy interventions. And policy interventions alone can get us to the goal of green hydrogen. One is technology. Well, technology is already, everybody is working on that. But the policy initiatives, by way we can make the electricity subsidized, by way we make the power cheaper for the final consumer as at the generation point, only then that will be the success of green hydrogen. Because 70% of the cost of producing green hydrogen comes from the cost of power. Electrolyzer is just 30%. So I think the key is to make power as affordable as possible, and only then the initiative of green hydrogen will go. And Indian Oil, as a leading energy provider of the country, we are making the right moves to send the right signal that green hydrogen is there, but it will take its own time. And we are in a very, a responsible position that we also have to ensure the energy security of the country, as well as making the right moves so that we are future ready when the net zero initiative actually comes to the peak. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Vaidya, very rightly saying that all the colors will coexist, and Indian Oil, I know, has been making the moves in the right direction. So now we'll move on to Mr. Rajat Seksaria. He's the CEO of Acme Clean Tech Solutions Private.
Thanks. I'm really delighted to be part of this very, very esteemed panel, some of the stalwarts of energy sector. But due permission of everyone, and to make this thought-provoking session more spicier, allow me to be a bit provocative on some of the thoughts shared by all my very, very senior and esteemed colleagues. So some of the thoughts were hydrogen is for future, cost is still not there, infrastructure is not ready, technology will have to improve by leaps and bounds. So I will challenge each of these notions. Another thought was hydrogen is the main thing. One sting out of my remarks were taken by Mr. Tarun Kapoor when he mentioned ammonia. So I'll challenge each of these notions and maybe take it to a bit extreme to just provoke a thought, just to, all of us are commercial and technical people here. So hydrogen may not be the future, but green ammonia is certainly the future, right? Why do I say that? We already have the infrastructure. World has been doing ammonia for donkey's year, more than 70, 80 years. First green ammonia and hydrogen was not prepared now. In 1950s, the first electrolyzers that were run in Norway were actually from hydropower. They were green. They were also run through nuclear power. They were pink. It's not that the world has just discovered a different nomenclature. So there nothing new about the technology. The only new boy in the piece is solar. Ammonia has been there for many years. Electrolyzers have been there for many years. So the technical changes that will happen may at best be incremental or supply chain limited, but we are not necessarily going to see something breakthrough like we saw in solar. So it will have to be an integration at economical cost that will make the play. Infrastructure, ammonia is already the third largest chemical traded globally, right? It is probably in terms of distance traveled, it has four hubs. Like Henry Hub, we have for gas, you have Usini Hub, have four hubs of pricing which are there, a well evolved structure which is there. Fourth point on the cost. So, again, let me give you an interesting figure. The largest line item in Government of India's budget is defense, all of us know. What I provoke and say the second largest item this year or the next year, if present prices prevail, is actually going to be fertilizer subsidy. Probably it will shock a lot of you. Even in the revised estimate of the budget, 1,40,000 crore is a subsidy on fertilizer, and that is because there is an averaging out of price. If today's price prevail, we'll probably hit a 2 lakh crore number for the next financial year. And when you stack up against all cost items in budget, it will either be number 2 or number 3 line item in terms of what Government of India spends. So that is the amount of money we give. So why? And this is all we do because we import a lot of urea, a lot of natural gas for urea that we manufacture. Another point is it cost competitive? Today, the price of ammonia, and it is available publicly, is anywhere between $1,000 to $1,500 per ton. In fact, people are scrambling for resources, especially after the Ukraine war. The average ammonia price for last 10 years, the median price is around $400, $390. Green is not available at 1,000, 1,500. Green can be done at 550, maybe $600 per ton. So we are not talking about the prices being outpriced. We are not talking about save the world kind of transition. On economics alone, today with this uncertainty, players, if they do projects at large scale, they can provide ammonia or hydrogen in the form of ammonia at a fixed price for 25 years. You take away the volatility of oil and gas and bring a certainty to the end user. Who there is a volatility premium, he can also give you that for that. Let me give another sector where the similar debate was happening maybe 20 years back. All of us are familiar with LNG, right? So LNG till 2020, there was only 40 to 50 million tons of global capacity in LNG. The same discussion was going on whether it will be viable, not viable, how much it will be viable. Today, LNG sector in just 2 decades, a bit more than 2 decades, from 50 million ton capacity globally, is an industry of almost 300 million tons globally, right? We have all seen in front of us, technology has come together, big infrastructure development has come together, user industries have come together. Same way it can happen for ammonia. Again, I'm not talking about hydrogen yet because the cases of use cases, commercialization of hydrogen is still some time it will take. But ammonia converted from hydrogen is something which can be scaled up fast. Use cases can be done. Let me give you another something which kind of will make more thought provoking because we thought it is a fuel of future. Even as we speak, tomorrow there is a big seminal event, or Friday is a big seminal event. First large tender for ammonia, clean ammonia, that is either blue or green, is being organized by JERA. For those of you who don't know, JERA is like the NTPC of Japan. They are just blending 20% of ammonia in a 1,000 megawatt boiler, and you need 0.5 million tons of ammonia for that. 0.5 million tons of ammonia means 2.5 gigawatt of solar, right? Just 20% in 1,000. Their published plan is from 20% they will go to 50%, and JERA itself has around 40 gigawatts of coal power plants in ammonia. We talked about win-win. This is another case of win-win where you don't completely discard coal, you use the coal filers, extend the life, little capital investment required, blend the fuel, get energy security and energy transition. So this is not future. We are bidding. Fortunately, as ACME, we are the only people invited from India to bid for the tender. We are going to make a bid for that. So I am challenging the notion that if we think a fuel is for future, it will probably perpetually remain a fuel for future. Then we need to advance our timelines, whether as industry, as policymakers, as financing world, to make it more a future of today than future. Some of the aspects of hydrogens are not for future because a project will take 3 years. If people bid and get positions here today, they will build projects in 2 years time, 3 years time. So the present is pretty much here at prices which are, at least in certain sector, in certain countries, competitive. Finally, I would end with one out of box thought, again giving the theme of win-win. It is true in India. I think we were talked that India, the economics will work at different. We have energy growing requirement. There is an interesting concept that we talk about. We have an equivalent of that, something called rent a womb concept. India can produce ammonia for countries which can pay higher, right? Japan buys LNG at $30 an MMBTU. We can't imagine. IOC or any other company can't imagine buying at $30 MMBTU for sustained period. They are buying today at $30 per MMBTU even for power application. Countries like Japan, countries like Germany, who have higher affordability, India can supply. We supply them along with green attributes. Or alternatively, we supply and consume ammonia as gray, as we were talked about, but the green part of it is segregated, and green is kind of supplied to these countries because they have to meet a much more steeper climate change trajectory within the country. So what we do physically is, because ammonia end of the product or hydrogen is still the same chemical compound, we consume it as gray, producing through green attributes, through green means, and whatever extra cost is required to balance that financing need, those green attributes can be sold to some of these countries who are really scrambling for meeting their green targets. So there are multiple ways, out of box, lateral thinking, adopting, I think, which we can advance some of these developments much faster at a much larger scale. And I think as Indians, we are known for frugality. This is one sector where frugality will come into it, whether it is the supply chain, whether it is the back-end development centers or global service centers for engineering of these projects, or the entrepreneurial spirit that as Indians we have demonstrated in several sectors, we can do it. And last point, since we have our European friends also in this meeting, the biggest commodity on this will not be steel, not be solar panels. The biggest commodity we need is money, right? These are all very capital intensive projects. At Indian cost of 10 rupees, certainly we are nowhere there. But we made a representation to the Japanese government also. If you can give money at 0.25% per bullet train, where the benefits of train are to India, why can't you give a 50-year loan at similar rates, and we can give you and meet your hydrogen requirements, meeting the cost that you need even for gray, right? If I have money at 1%, believe me, and put that numbers in Excel, and you will have amazing results.
I think.
So thanks, and I think I really
Thank you,
privileged.
Mr. Rajat. Now we move on to Mr. Pashupati Gopalan. I will request you to be brief because we have already overshot the time allocated for this session, please.
I'll just take a couple of minutes here. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here along with so many dignitaries and distinguished guests and dear friends. Since I have to be brief, maybe I'll just make one point. Some of us, Ardeshir, Sunil and I, we all started working in solar along with Manoj more than 12 years back, and we started developing the solar industry. We all know that the entire solar industry over the last decade, or maybe 12, 13 years, has been built with imports from China. And the Chinese solar industry today is about 350 gigawatts, while India is just scratching the surface. I'm very grateful to the government that we have made the changes and now we're starting to manufacture. But we're still more than a decade behind in solar. And really, I think China has become the hub for solar. And solar is going to become one of the future, not only in the future, even today, it's one of the lowest cost of energies, and it's going to grow, continue to grow rapidly. And I wouldn't be surprised by 2030 or 2040, India will have several terawatts of solar because it's going to continue to go down. Do we want to repeat the same in hydrogen? I think really it's not hydrogen is not for the future. I hear a lot of comments everywhere I go. People talk about something, it'll come in the future. Every comment is like that. We'll start experimenting in a small scale. You can do all of that, then a decade will go by and some other country will become the leader for green hydrogen. So we decided 3 years back to put money where our mouth is. We have close to 300 people now. We have 0.5 gigawatt of manufacturing in India. 95% of our employees are in India. We have developed state-of-the-art electrolyzers, and we started exporting from October last year. But look, I think every company can do that in India and make India the hub for hydrogen. If we don't do that, if we do go to $7.5 trillion economy like Mr. Vaidya was suggesting, do we want to have $500 billion of import of fossil fuel? So I don't see that as being energy secure when you have to spend $500 billion money which goes into other economies. if you have a solution, I think we need to move a lot more faster, a lot more rapid. I think the technology is there for us to make much more aggressive plans, and I applaud what Rajat is doing along with Manoj to go and be brave and participate and try to beat uh, traditional ammonia with green ammonia projects that they have developed. Our estimate is that we can deliver hydrogen cheaper than diesel without calculating the cost of taxes. If I were to assume that diesel is 40 rupees a liter, we believe that we can have hydrogen. And like Honorable Tarun Kapoorji was saying earlier, for long haul transportation for trucks and buses, it is a no brainer that hydrogen will be the solution. For any larger goods transportation, trucks primarily, let's say, you will be cheaper than diesel today, not in the future, but obviously it takes time. For someone to go design a truck and bring it to the road is a 5-year exercise. So even if we start today, and even if our friends that make trucks, Tata and Ashok Leyland, if they were to start, I think they can very easily develop something more economical than diesel today, not in the future. So my appeal is, if you want India to become a hub for hydrogen, I think we have to start a lot more aggressively. Otherwise, we will find ourselves importing $500 billion worth of fossil fuel, and it'll become difficult to become energy independent that we have committed. Because some other country, instead of importing fossil, we will be importing hydrogen electrolyzers from another country. If we don't rapidly grow and make 50 companies like Omium do it. And I'm very glad to see that most of the energy leaders in the country, including GAIL, is thinking about it. But Mukesh Bhai and Gautam Bhai, they all have taken big bets, and they are already planning on working on it. So I'm very grateful. So India is headed in the direction to become a leader, and I think all of us need to do our bit and our part to be a lot more aggressive in adopting green hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pashupati. I don't know. You mentioned that it is cheaper than diesel, but as far as the green hydrogen, if at $6, $5, it won't be. Perhaps for if you have hydrogen at $2, and then maybe even in IC engines. And I'm aware that some of the companies are developing. You're rightly saying Ashok Leyland and Tata's. They are also working with some of the private sector oil company where they are aggressively trying to market hydrogen. So thank you, Mr. Pashupati. Now we'll request Mr. B.C. Tripathi. He's former chairman of GAIL and he's advisor to SNAM Italy and advisor to Greenco. Mr. Tripathi, please.
Thank you, Dr. Malhotra. Respected Dr. Kakotkar, Tarun Kapoorji, distinguished speaker on the dais, friends from audience. Very pleasant good afternoon to all of you. Well, I'll start from where Mr. Vaidya left, because a person from the hydrocarbon sector, I have been hearing this. After my retirement, first time I've attended this conference after 3 years. You see, India is going to import 90% of its crude. People don't like it. I used to say in the conference at that time, today I'm telling you, India is going to import more than 75% of its gas requirement. You are not going to live without import of oil and gas. This is a fact. People don't like this statement. We come from a hydrocarbon sector, having spent 36, 37 years. We have seen it practically. So it's better to speak truth. But this offers a great opportunity. The conference will say the opportunity and challenges. So therefore, I see this is a great opportunity for us, to reduce our import dependence. And the biggest problem what we face here in India is the volatility of the price. And this is what we are struggling today. I remember in 2007, as a director of marketing of GAIL, when we used to go to Qatar, we were not getting even appointments to meet them. Forget about buying gas, forget about paying the price. All gas used to go to Japan and to Korea because they were able to pay a high price. So I, as a director of marketing, was not welcome at that time. And that's why later on, when I became chairman in 2009, I decided to diversify. And the first contract GAIL signed was from US. And then second contract was signed with Russia. Third contract was signed with Australia. So we decided at that time that we diversify our supply source, apart from diversifying from the oil-linked gas. And today, country is enjoying. The gas which we are getting in India from US is at $10, and market is $20, $25. All the gas which we are getting with the long-term contracts are today at $10 to $12 price. This is the advantage. So the point which I'm trying to draw with this past experience, this is the lesson that we must try to develop our indigenous source of energy in whatever form we can. Dr. Kakutka spoke about the whole broader picture. So whether it is a biofuel, whether it is solar or a wind or hydrogen or ammonia, we'll need everything in this country. So question is, how do we manage our transition? Also nuclear, of course, sir. You have been the champion of nuclear, I know that. So this is the second important thing. So the question is, how do we convert this green electron to the green molecules? That's an opportunity for all of us to exist. And what are the challenges? For us, the challenge is that, and then Mr. Eric mentioned is very rightly that we are one of the low-cost renewable power producer in the world. So this is a great advantage. And the another biggest advantage which we have, you have one of the most robust transmission grid. So we can transport electricity in nook and corner of the country. This is another biggest strength which we have. So how do we leverage on both these issues? The lowest cost of power and very well robust transmission system for electricity. And what I see that with this today, when Europe is talking about $6, $7 per kg of hydrogen, it is possible today to produce hydrogen at $4 or sub $4 in India in the current price, in the current setup. We discuss about the technology evolving. Well, all kind of technologies will evolve, and they will definitely, with the passage of time, there will be innovation, there will be efficiency improvement. But if we are able to go to this scale today, we will be able to bring down the cost of electrolyzer from the current level at least 30 to 40% below what it is available today in the market. People are talking somewhere into range of $500 to $800, $900 per kilowatt, which translates into roughly 4 crores per megawatt and going up to 7-8 crores per megawatt. But then it is possible if you are able to go to the scale to bring it down. So the biggest challenge for us is that how do we bring that scale of projects? How do we create the demand? And definitely, as the previous speaker mentioned about the policy support from the government, both in terms of creation of demand, in terms of fiscal support, in terms of incentive. Then I also see a great opportunity for us to adopt this technology, innovate here at home, and then how do we cut down the cost? It is possible for us to bring this manufacturing of electrolyzer in India, establish the supply chain, cut down the cost. And as you see that yesterday itself, Greenco has announced a 2 gigawatt electrolyzer manufacturing capacity in India with John Cockrell. So what they're planning, sometime by next 18 to 24 months, we'll have 1 gigawatt of electrolyzer manufacturing in India. The challenge and opportunity lies here. How do we establish the supply chain to cut down the cost and bring down the cost of the electrolyzer? So that's a challenge, and that's an opportunity also for us. The next important part which we discuss about ammonia, I fully agree with you, Mr. Rajat. Ammonia is an immediate opportunity available to us, not only to meet the domestic demand as and when the opportunity comes, but also to meet the export. And why don't we utilize this opportunity which we have, the low cost of energy, and then use it to export and to balance what you talked about of sort of a global pool of gas price, which you used to do a gas price pooling, something like that pooling, if it is possible to get a low cost capital and we meet their demand of energy where they can pay a higher price of these ammonia. So that's a very good suggestion. I think that's where we all should work together. As a country, we still import 3 million tons of ammonia. And if you look at last 10 years average price, it came out to be roughly a $500 a ton, which means on an average $1.5 billion of import we are doing of ammonia. This is an opportunity available to us as an industry here. Why can't we localize this ammonia production here in India and create that scale? When we are able to create that scale, demonstrate to the world, then definitely we'll be one of the most sought after supplier. So that's an immediate opportunity for us. Apart from the other area, when we talked about refinery, we talked about steel, we talked about transport, these opportunities definitely do lie for us. And then it's a question of how do we improve the economics. Today, if we are able to produce, let's say at $4 per kg, which people are talking about, it is easily possible to come to the level of roughly $3, sub $3 today, if we are able to think of that scale, if you are able to bring the manufacturing in a country. And the another important aspect which was discussed was about the reliable power supply around the cost. So we have again a challenge that how do we improve the efficiency and utilization of plant. For that you need a regular power, and all the consuming industry, with a process industry, whether it is fertilizer, whether it's refinery, steel or chemical, they need round the clock supply of hydrogen. So for that we have an option either to create a storage of hydrogen or to create a storage of power. How do you store? So this is an option within both of them where we can improve our economics and efficiency. We have to look at that. So therefore the country needs large amount of storage, whether it comes from hydro or it comes from battery. We need all kind of those storages which will enable us to improve the quality of power, which will enable us to run these plants in a most efficient manner around the clock, because storage of hydrogen has its own limitation and challenges and cost implication. So therefore this is another policy support where we need probably a robust policy for the storage system. As we are going to increase the integration of renewable power, we need to ensure that we have a very stable grid. We are able to optimally utilize all the solar power which we are producing, and how do we manage that and convert this into storage. So ultimately it's an optimization of from generation to storage to transmission. It will require that kind of regulatory support to have a storage policy also. The recent support which government has given in terms of wheeling of power, banking of power for production of hydrogen and other green fuels, it definitely a welcome step, but probably much more supports will be needed in terms of fiscal support, the manufacturing incentive. How do you localize those electrolyzer manufacturing? So I think these are the opportunity for us as a country, and also these are the challenges that how do we improve the economics overall. Until we are able to deliver hydrogen at a level of sub $3, $2, I don't think it's not going to take off the demand. So this is a balance which we have to arrive, and the support is required at all level, from the industry level, from the government level, from the policymaker, and all the people who are attending this kind of conference and advocating the use of green hydrogen. So it's basically a collective effort for all of us that we demonstrate that. So that's what I see as an opportunity. And the other important aspect is the investment. If we are setting up a 1 million ton of green ammonia plant, along the value chain, we need an investment of almost $5 billion. So this is also an opportunity for us to seek a great amount of investment coming into India. So how do you make it an attractive market for the foreign player to finance these big projects? This is again a great opportunity for us. If we are able to have those kind of policy support, I think capital flow should not be a problem. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
You have been rightly saying that the policy support for this kind of activity is a must. And storage policy, because storage cost of storage and transportation of hydrogen at times is more than the cost of production of hydrogen. So I request now Chairman sir to give his concluding remarks for this session. We have heard all these speakers, and before we
have a few minutes for audience questions.
yeah, okay, we can one or two questions.
You're running behind time.
Yeah, if we I think you conclude and we can have question answers. They are having 5-10 minutes tea break. They're having tea break for 5-10 minutes, and then they said that they will, question answers can be, they can have interaction with you. Or maybe one or two questions quick if somebody's.
I think
one or two. Yeah.
very brief question, and if there is a response also. One sentence question, one sentence answer, and just two questions.
It is obvious that then your green hydrogen makes sense, because if you're going to make grey hydrogen from that gas price, it is definitely not making sense. But the problem is, how do you build up the capacity? Any plant which you want to do on scale today will take 2 years. So your economics is not sure. So how do you plan for that? We're talking of the hydrogen that we are going to make in the refineries. Actually, this will be first of a statement. Please understand, we have to make a statement, because as I told, we have to break the chicken and egg story. Somebody has to take the first initiative. And since we are large consumers of bulk hydrogen, I think that is the best way to start in the refineries, because hydrogen coming in the automotive sector will take its own time, as we have discussed. By the time the trucks, the heavy duty trucks come, it will take time. So the initial first breakthrough can happen in the refineries. And yes, it will take time, 2 years. We are not talking something that is going to quickly happen. Again and again, I am telling you that. We can't hasten this. It will take its own time.
But to begin with, let's make a beginning. Let's 2 years down the line, let us see that 10% and we'll scale it up. We have plans by 2030 to make at least some of the refineries 100% on green hydrogen. But it will take time.
From economics point of view, it makes sense. Grey hydrogen doesn't make sense that these gas prices.
That's
Gas
true.
prices will come down.
See, we are not expecting this gas prices to remain. They are not sustainable to anybody. This is a aberration. It will come down.
Well, I'm being told that we should quickly wind this session, wind up.
I come from the automotive background, and big question where a lot of initiatives on different fuels, including usage of electricity or electric vehicles, is being promoted. A lot of investments for the automotive industry for different technologies has to be made. For hydrogen to be introduced, say for CNG took us almost 2 decades to make it a reality. Now today we are almost at 40 or 50% of our production, replacing the gasoline going to CNG. Do we see in terms of policy whether government would mandate that hydrogen usage would be there, both for IC engines and fuel cells? So in terms of policy, is there something on that horizon?
To whom you are addressing this question?
Policymakers. Senator Saab has not come.
Well, I think let me just make a very broad comment. First of all, these transitions don't happen very sharply. We have done so much on CNG, and be assured CNG will continue for a long time. There will be different new technology will come, they will coexist depending on their performance. One will grow, one will come down. The key point is, regardless of everything, the clean transition or net zero has become a life and death matter. So, economics is on one side, but there is this IAIA. Dr. Sarvaswamy, we are looking for policy persons.
In the reverse direction or the forward?
Please come. So let me just finish that answer. So they will coexist, and where this transition we're talking about 5 decades at least, or maybe 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades. Now, and there is always this question, as you asked that question, economics versus movement in technology. This is, as Sri Vaidya very correctly pointed out, this is an egg and chicken problem. And I'm sure if you leave it to pure economic or financial decision, technology will never move. So there are people who take risks, who take decisions, and then the sort of the economics follows. So I think this is a part of evolution, which, and of course, the smarter the policymakers, we make these things smarter. And smart policymaker is here. I think we'll request
him.
So
Dr.
maybe
What is the subject on which I had to talk about policy?
no. Let me. Let me bring you up to speed.
Because I'm not at,
See,
on the same
this
level.
panel has gone through making their own statements with respect to the green hydrogen, and we just had question, and there was question with respect to particularly automotive sector. We just have come through the CNG investments, infrastructure, transition. Now we're talking about hydrogen. So there is concern, So I was trying to.
So it is specific
So and
to
then he was.
auto sector.
Yeah, but I took it as a general thing. The same thing is you can apply it in many other area. But no, you can give your overall brief on hydrogen and then come to this.
No, because you have already discussed hydrogen. Hydrogen. See, as far as hydrogen is concerned, we all know that it is the fuel which we had to work for, and I'm using the word hydrogen, and I'm not adding any color to that, because I feel that the moment you start adding color to hydrogen, you complicate the issues. Hydrogen is hydrogen, and it is to be used as a fuel for different applications, as an input, as a chemical. Now, if you are to look at the climate change goals which we have set for ourselves, earliest we get into the hydrogen economy, the fastest will be to achieve that. There's no doubt about it, and that's why the government of India announced the. Now I will use the adjective also, because they have announced the green hydrogen mission. So the green hydrogen mission, which has been announced by the government of India, works towards achieving hydrogen economy for all applications, whether it is automotive sector or fertilizers or the cement plant or the steel plant or any other application, whether it required to be done. The basis on which the entire mission, hydrogen mission, has been planned is basically with the assumption that the demand for hydrogen, if it is increased, automatically the scale of operation of hydrogen technologies for production, for storage, for transportation, for dispensation, all that will grow. This is the basis on which. Now, that is where the catch lies. The catch lies in that we are assuming that if we start producing green hydrogen today with the kind of processes what we have, whether it is the electrolysis of water or bioenergy based production or biomass based production, which is supposed to be the green hydrogen, it will be cost competitive for all the applications which I mentioned to you, which is the problem at the moment. As on today, and as per all the studies which have been done across various platforms globally and even in-house, it is very clearly identified that green hydrogen is not going to be competitive for any of these applications for at least next 5 to 7 years. Now, that is the kind of scenario it is for green hydrogen to become cost competitive to meet the industrial requirements, automotive requirements, any other requirements. Now, we can always justify our assumptions by saying that I'm going to add 18% hydrogen into CNG, so it will be increasing the demand. Somebody will say, I'll give another 20% viability gap funding, so it will become competitive. That means you are cutting corners. Technology is not by cutting corners. Technology is by actually doing technology and bringing down the cost of hydrogen production, storage, and transportation. And for that, I personally believe that there's a lot of R&D, there's a lot of scaling of operations have to be done for us to reach that level. And that's why this time scale of 5, 7, 10 years is required. Number two, hydrogen is not green till such time the grid is decarbonized. If it is not decarbonized, it is very clearly stated by British Petroleum in their analysis that 90% grid has to be decarbonized if hydrogen has to be really green in its totality. Now, for the grid to be 90% decarbonized, you can understand that all your thermal power plants, all your other energy producing devices have to become completely carbon free. And those of you who are looking at the energy scenarios which are emerging throughout, despite the fact that we have added a huge segment of renewable power, is still a 52% to 57% power that we get today is from the fossil fuel sources and things like that. I may be wrong, 52, maybe 60, that number, because it keeps changing. So I'm just not giving that. And it is also said that till about 2035, this is not going to go below 42%. So in a scenario like that, do you ever think that in 2035 we will have a decarbonized grid? If the grid is not decarbonized, that hydrogen is not green. You may use solar energy and say that I'll use solar energy only, but then solar energy has its own problem. So you have to look at that. Now, when it comes to the only portion is how do you increase the demand? So my take on this is very clear. To increase the demand of hydrogen, we should follow a route which will be cost competitive. And the only route which is cost competitive is to make hydrogen blue. Today, everybody uses gray hydrogen in his refineries. Somebody uses gray hydrogen in the cement plant. Somebody uses in the fertilizer plant. And whosoever is going to make tomorrow a fuel cell, probably he will also use the hydrogen, which is stored hydrogen. Like, for example, Tata's ran some bus, probably they have used only solar energy for producing it, so it was green. But if you take well-to-wheel emission somewhere, and you will find that it is not so green. So if you really want to do that, the answer is to reduce the carbon footprint while producing the gray hydrogen. And that's why gray should be made blue. So my take on this subject is very clear, which I have often repeated, that the enabler for green hydrogen is the blue hydrogen. And the blue hydrogen is only way is carbon capture, utilization and storage. In many process which you do, and that's why we are conducting a one-day seminar on this particular thing on 30th of this March, and I would request all of you to kindly join on BAB, because it's a hybrid kind of a thing, so you can always give your views on that. So this is, if you produce blue hydrogen, the demand will go up. Some of the industries which are finding green hydrogen at today's cost not cost competitive, they have to invest only 15 to 20% extra in producing blue hydrogen, because the cost of CCUS is only not more than that. So you will get the required thing. So the moment they start using blue hydrogen, the processes for making steel will get modified. The fertilizer plants who are finding that the cost of using green hydrogen today increases the cost of fertilizer from $350 per ton to something like $770 per ton. That kind of a dissimilarity will vanish. So you will be in a position to increase the demand. In parallel, we continue to scale up the production of electrolyzers. We continue to scale up the production of fuel cells. We continue to develop new technologies. Like today, you must have seen new technologies are coming up for electrolyzers. Graphene-based catalyst, somebody has come out with the latest information that came 2 days back, which is certainly, he is claiming that the cost will come down to less than $2 per kg of hydrogen with that kind of electrolyte. So there is a technology growth which is taking place. It has to be matured and it has to be made at scale at which you will be able to. But if I take today's cost, the electrolyzer is between $670 to as high as $1,200 per kilowatt hour. That is the kind of cost structure. Of course, some Chinese are selling it for $375, but I don't know how it has happened and how reliable and how good it is. But certainly it may be. I have not tested it, so I can't say much. But then that is the way it is happening. But if you look at Europe, if you look at America, if you look at Russia, everybody is selling in this price range. With this price range, the cost of hydrogen is $5 to $7 per kg. That is the kind of number. Now coming to automobile sector, which is what Dr. Kakotkar was mentioning, my take on this is also very clear. Unfortunately, we have entered into e-mobility segment without actually looking at the viability of lithium-ion battery as the only solution. We have said that lithium-ion battery is the panacea. It will solve all my problems of e-mobility. I had made a very clear analysis of this, not today, about 1.5 years back, and I had suggested that two-wheelers and three-wheelers kind of e-mobility is possible. But the moment you go from beyond hatchback, if you are going for a sedan or if you are going for SUVs or if you are going for commercial vehicles, the lithium-ion battery is not the solution for the reasons which all of you are aware. I don't have to reiterate. The answer lies there is to support hybrid mobility in that case. Unfortunately, myself and Professor Jhunjhunwala, who has been the advisor to the government on this particular subject, were completely north-south. And as a result, we went into this kind of a thing. We have not given the same kind of incentives which we should have given to the hybrid structure. If you give hybrid vehicle, you have two advantages. You introduce the e-mobility infrastructure in the country, because you will then produce batteries, you will produce motors, you will produce fuel cells, everything. And that will give you capability for going for sedans and commercial vehicles also. So unfortunately, we did not give the kind of tax reductions and viability and support even in the FAME 2 stipulations which have come. Although the word hybrid is there, but when you look at the tax structure, it is not so. It is only for e-mobility, that is the battery-driven vehicles. So my point is that we should look for hybrid. But ultimately, we have to go for hydrogen-based systems for all our transportation. Now, hydrogen-based systems can be done whether the hydrogen is a stored hydrogen at high pressures of 700 bars on top of the vehicle like a bus or a lorry, or can I use a hydrogen carrier like a methanol? Methanol is a hydrogen carrier. Ammonia is a hydrogen carrier. I can use any one of them, reform them on board a vehicle to produce hydrogen, which is a possible option today. There's a company called Element 2, if I'm not wrong, in Danish company or some, I don't remember now. But one of the companies which is making reformers today at reasonable cost. You can use a reformer on board. So you carry a fuel tank of methanol or ammonia, reform it into hydrogen, and run a fuel cell. Any size of vehicle you can run today, and your emissions will be down by almost because you are using fuel cells, so no emissions. Even if you are using hybrid, your emissions will be 35 to 40% low. So this is the roadmap for automobile we should follow. And this is the only way we will be able to solve the problem. Of course, there are some very interesting solutions which the people are finding, that you don't have to remove your battery. I will set up a good farm of battery charging stations. So you leave your vehicle and I will give another vehicle and you can drive it, go to the next station. These are solutions which I feel are there, but not there also. So we'll look at that. So we have to look at technology, and technology is taking us into the green hydrogen domain, but with respect to R&D and developing systems which will be cost effective tomorrow. This is all I can say.
Thank you very much to everyone today. Before we switch to the next panel, I would like to request Chairman Mr. Mehta and Dr. Malhotra to give away a small token of appreciation and gratitude to the panelists. First of all, I would request Chairman Mr. Mehta to hand over, since we are in the green hydrogen topic, the token of gratitude is a green plant, to Dr. Anil Kakotkar for his valuable time and views. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. I would request Dr. Malhotra to hand over the plants to Mr. Eric Solem from Green Hydrogen Organization. Request Mr. Mehta to hand over to Mr. S.M. Vaidya, Chairman and Managing Director, Indian Oil. Mr. Vaidya. Request Dr. Malhotra to hand over the plant to Shri Tarun Kapoor. Request Mr. Mehta to hand it over to Mr. Pashu Gopalan, Chairman and CEO, Sun Edison. And to Mr. V.C. Tripathi, former Chairman GAIR. Dr. Malhotra. And finally to Mr. Rajat Seksaria, CEO, ACME. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll now have a group photo of the panelists. Group photo. As we go into the second session, we would I would request Chairman Mehta to hand the plant over to Mr. Saraswat. I request audience to please be seated. We have another session of 45 minutes now, after which we'll wind up the program. I would now like to request Mr. Mehta and Dr. Malhotra to kindly be seated on the dash. Very happy to announce that today the National Solar Energy Federation of India and the Hydrogen Association of India are going to sign an MOU and launch the National Green Hydrogen Industry Consortium, which will now work closely with the government to take the green hydrogen message forward. Mr. Mehta from NSEFI and Dr. Malhotra from HI will be signing this MOU in the presence of Dr. V.K. Saraswat, Dr. Kakotkar. Sir, please. Through this MOU, NSEFI and HAI are going to work very closely to take the cooperation in the green hydrogen field forward. Exchange. You can just, sir, Kakotkar sir, Dr. Kakotkar, can you, sir, please. Thank you very much, sir. I would also like to request Mr. Jonas Moberg from Green Hydrogen Organization to join us for the second MOU signing. NSEFI and Green Hydrogen Organization are going to sign another MOU of cooperation today.
So happy.
NSEFI and Green Hydrogen Organization are also signing an agreement of cooperation. Thank you very much, everyone. We would now start the second session of the day. You can quickly grab your refreshments for 5 minutes and come back. You can take the refreshments and come back and join us. We'll be resuming the second session in exactly 5 minutes. Thank you. Collaborations and industry academia cooperation in the sector. We are very happy to have Dr. V.K. Saraswat chairing the session again. This session will be moderated by Professor Adishir Contractor, who is the Professor of Practice at Ohio State University and also the Chair of NSEFI Innovation Initiative on Sustainable Energy. There's one chair there. Shift one there. Mr. Panda. So we have how many speakers are there? This session.
Yes.
यहाँ से दे दो या ही बोल देंगे नहीं छोड़ो स्लाइड I will work on extempore is better. I think the tea session is still on. Malhotra साहब, चाय बंद करवा दीजिए तो लोग अंदर आ जाएंगे. और मुझे चाय यहीं दिला दीजिए. And second session, I understand we are talking of technologies for promoting green hydrogen as per the requirement of our India's hydrogen mission, and the role which the industries are going to play in various aspects of hydrogen economy. Now, as I mentioned in my earlier talk in the earlier session, the mandate what we have is to bring down the cost of hydrogen in such a manner so that it becomes competitive with the hydrogen produced by natural gas or biomass or any other factor. Now that is the kind of effort we have to make. What it means is that, and also we have to produce by way that means so that it remains green. That means the net carbon impact should be practically zero. So this is the kind of mandate we have. Now hydrogen being a low molecular weight item, very light, with certain specific energy what you have. The major problem is not only production, but it is storage, its transportation, and also its dispensation. So technologies are required for it to become cost effective in all aspects. I'll give you a rundown. What is the addition of cost today if you take right from production to the dispensation of hydrogen? Hydrogen in the present cost bracket when it is produced, even with the solar energy, you will get in the region of $4 to $5 or $4 to $6 per kg. On top of that, if you put the storage requirement, the cost goes to something like $7 to $8. I'm talking of cumulative cost. If you now take that transportation cost, it adds another $2. And if you take dispensation, so at the outlet, the cost of green hydrogen is in the region of $14 to $16 per kg as on today's data. This is a European Union data which has been published in 2021. I might be here and there by $1 or $2 because I'm just speaking extempore. I don't have my papers with me, but it is in the region of that $12 to $13 is the dispensation. So the industry activity is basically now, and R&D activity is now to how to reduce the cost of this particular hydrogen economy aggregates so that it becomes cost competitive. And it is a direct function to what is the cost at which the energy is being produced. So if you have the energy being produced at 20 megawatts per, in that region, $20 per megawatt or $40 per megawatt, that kind of a region, then you have certain structures in which these figures change. So energy cost becomes very important. Fortunately, solar energy in India has come down significantly low. But solar energy, if you take with the base load, that means if you integrate either with a storage device like battery, or you go into pumped hydro or any other system by which you can do the hydrogen, then in that case the cost becomes in the region of $4 to $6. Now $4 to $6 when it becomes, then again its competitiveness comes down. So in a situation like that, the industry requirement is to also develop base load technologies so that the grid is completely carbon neutral. Now, what are the base load technologies? One is, of course, people have used battery. Another one is, I would say, that for production as well as other things, is to get rid of the fossil fuel production of power and provide the base load using nuclear energy. Now, somebody will say whether the nuclear energy will give you the right kind of cost. I would say yes. Particularly, if India takes a decision today that all our thermal power plants which are aging, they have already spent about 25 or 26 years of useful life, those are aging power plants. instead of setting them up with new thermal power plants, if we take a decision that it will be a SMR, what we call as small modular reactors. If I take small modular reactor to replace it in the region of 300 megawatt, then the cost will be in the region of $4 to $6 what we were talking about, of the base energy. And the cost of setting up such power plants will also not be so high as like a big nuclear power plant. And it can be a factory built, factory assembled system which can be provided. So the right combination is to work on SMR for base load, new solar energy and wind energy, all the renewable energies, whatever you can do, reduce the cost thereof, increase the localization content so that you are not dependent for supply chain for photovoltaic cells from China and other countries, for magnets for your motor in the from other countries, and for converters and transformers and everything. Because if you look at our today's portfolio, solar energy 80% import, wind energy 75% import. That is the kind of scenario we have. We can't have in today's scenario, as Dr. Kapoor was telling or somebody else was telling, in the light of what has happened today in this Ukraine and Russia war, the compliance and also the COVID, all this has put the supply chain into complete turmoil. And if you don't become self-sufficient to a large extent, then all these ideas what we have will go out of the window. So industry effort and R&D effort is basically to increase localization and also reduce the cost of producing electrolyzers, reduce the cost of producing fuel cells, reduce the cost of producing type 4 hydrogen cylinders to store hydrogen at 750 bars, produce compressors in our country so that we are not dependent on America. There are only 4 companies in the world who are producing compressors which can take pressure to 700 bars, oil free completely, so we have a problem. So like that, various aggregates have to be done, and they have to be done. And safety regulations have to be set in motion, because hydrogen is also very important. One important area is regulations on safety, because it is, after all, a dangerous material in terms of safety. Any leakage can cause into different kind of problems. And if you are going for liquefying hydrogen, then you should develop technologies for liquefaction of hydrogen, de-liquefaction of hydrogen. So industry's role is to set up industry at a scale at which the cost will be competitive, and also quality will be competitive. This is what we are looking at. For this, R&D efforts have to be required. So all the IITs, all the NITs and all have to take major steps in developing the new materials, new methodologies, new processes for doing that. And finally, I would like to mention that world is doing a lot of work in this area. I read recently an article that there was a company which is manufacturing through a 2-stage plasma gasification process, production of hydrogen from the biomass and MSW at a rate $2 per kg. This is what Solena company is somewhere. Now, there's a lot of work going on, but are we doing similar amount of work in our country? Is a question mark. Are we doing a research which is directed towards certain applications, or are we still doing research which is only suitable for generating knowledge and publishing papers? So that is the way the research trajectory has to change. More should go on translation, and we should focus on specific problems of hydrogen economy and do development and work with industry to produce systems at scale. That is my message would be. I would like the panelists to throw their light on all these issues which I have flagged, and then we'll also entertain questions from the audience. Okay? So can I start with your moderating?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Saraswat. I think you put it very clearly what the focus should be. So let me talk about, as we set the ideas of looking at electrolyzers, systems, and green hydrogen as to how to work with solar. Let me talk about a little bit of what I have been doing and what we've been doing. So to give you some background on the system level thinking in green hydrogen. So I'm a professor at Ohio State, but I have been a solar developer here, an early pioneer of solar over here, and worked with the National Solar Energy Foundation in FICCI. And what we found out is that many companies are thinking about the whole integration. How do you put together green hydrogen? So First Solar, the electrolyzer companies, Norway Electrolyzers, Enrel, and others are saying, how do you do this together? So we did a study funded by National Science Foundation over a year to understand how do systems work and do you need to optimize and match, and where are the inefficiencies in green hydrogen and where are the efficiencies. So let me tell you some of our findings. One is clearly it is not solar, like you said, it is solar, nuclear, wind. You have to find a good mix of renewable energy if you're going to do green hydrogen. Cannot be just solar wind. Okay. The second was you have to look at grid-tied systems and non-grid-tied systems differently. So you cannot think of everything which is just going to be grid-tied. The third is, if you're going to be doing standalone systems or even grid-tied systems, think about remaining more in DC converters and others. We are not trying to build power to inject into the grid and then burn it out. We are trying to work out systems. Electrolyzers are small voltage systems, photovoltaic and others also systems. There's a lot of mapping. The fourth thing that we realize is that efficiencies make a lot, change a lot in a variable format. So when you have solar, wind, and others, varying current densities tend to lead to varying efficiencies, lead to dangerous situations of ripples, leads to situations. So handling the whole power system and optimizing it and controlling it is very, very important. And there it is, the point comes that where you can use new technology, AI, controls, pipeline gap, and other control systems, new topologies of control to be able to actually optimize. Our analysis says that there is between 4 to 12% of actual savings that can be done by looking at systems outside the electrolyzer and the photovoltaic modules and the generators at the system level that perhaps need to be looked at right now before it is, we need to be able to demonstrate, get and show that this can work, and that can only happen by putting plants up and seeing the performance on the ground. We work very closely. We have a research center with IIT Bombay called the Frontier Research Center, and we work with NCPRE. And NCPRE, as Dr. Sharat will talk to you, is working very closely with NSEFI in all across the solar. So we will have a chance to talk about all of that. Let me now hand over to Kapil.
Yeah.
Kapil.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kapil Maheshwari, and I work with Reliance Industries. While the previous session was largely on policy, regulatory, green versus different colors were spoken, and this section, the focus was largely on technology and collaborations. I would say the way I would look technology would be at each step, from upstream, midstream, and downstream. So what is upstream is the whole generation part. Where we say that yes, we have always been speaking of green hydrogen with solar. Yes, can we look at how do we improve the CUF just with solar, either solar plus battery, or look at hybrids like Adesh just mentioned. Even if we are not looking at nuclear in this way, but at least wind solar being very, very complementary can provide a decent amount of going up to what you need, what you call as in round the clock power, which you want to feed it to your electrolyzer. Then the next point of discussion would be to look at, if at all, on a generation side. So I'm just looking at the whole ecosystem because that's where we want to address the whole ecosystem in a more holistic way. So that's a little bit on generation. Everything is spoken on storage, transportation of hydrogen, the safety aspects, what all you could do. I would say, if at all, at generation point itself, if we look, why do we in fact talk of too many things about grid, etc.? That we need grid power, we need grid supporting. Yes, of course, there is a little bit of grid required, but can we even do very, very, decentralized electrolysis process where this is where I'm generating renewable and this is where I'm converting that electron to a molecule. With solar, you generate DC power, and what you need to power with electrolyzer is also DC. Why step it up to 220, 400 kV, 765 for very, very large scale solar system, feed it to the grid, again bring it back and convert to DC and lose a lot of AC/DC, DC/AC losses, etc. Can we look at from perspective that yes, I'm generating renewables and I'm converting it there itself. Of course, it requires some bit of grid because and some bit of storage as well because you cannot your auxiliary power for all your requirements. The second point where we can certainly do at this moment would be the whole of balance of plant. While we look at that as in country, we may not have a very very mature electrolyzer technology. Let me first, at the point I missed, I would like to start that none of these things, what was spoken or what we are speaking right now, is new. And if being a person who has done a renewable journey already, even in solar, nothing new happened. We've seen efficiencies moving from 15-16% to 20-22%. But those are nothing is a radical change. It is a partial shift which has happened over a good period of time. But what has brought the cost down was largely the scale. An initial period, I would say incentives. So incentives have been spoken, but I would say even here, even if these systems exist for a very very long time, nothing is new. Electrolyzers are not new. Fuel cells are not new. Electrolysis process for making hydrogen also is not new. And using fuel cells for mobility also is not new. Then why green hydrogen being spoken of so much in last only 1.5 or 2 years? If nothing is new, it's largely to do with the cost parity and the energy security, and that is what I feel is driving. Energy security was addressed in the last session, and to a larger extent, even cost parity was discussed, and we just spoke on numbers on $4 to $6 cost of production, to up to landed cost of $12 to $13 when it comes after everything. On a midstream side also, I feel a good amount of innovation needs to be done. We really need to look how do we provide efficiencies in the balance of plant itself at the generating end. So while electrolyzer is one part of it, at India when we were able to bring down the cost of the whole balance of system for renewable power plant, I'm sure with the BOP for electrolysis system as well, there's a good amount of possibility we can do. And from a midstream side, all these things are discussed, liquefaction to talk of derivatives, anything from H2 to NH3. Any of these forms we can look and figure out what's more beneficial at this moment, or from perspective of either of the derivative. Carbon fiber as a material is certainly produced in India, so carbon fiber cylinders can be looked from a storage perspective as well. And of course, compressors is a little bit of challenge because even there you need to put it at a pressure of 350 to 700 bars. On a downstream side, I guess the major focus, what is being spoken about, was largely on mobility. There was a good, because that's where people are able to relate. But I would say a majority of the downstream application, in my assessment, 80% would be where hydrogen would be. Even when we are talking of 10-12 million tons by 2030, and possibly even higher, my sense would be that 80% of that would be as a feedstock or fuel for industrial application and not for mobility. So, can we even give a breather and think outside for those downstream application where majority of hydrogen would be used as feedstock or as a fuel? So, I would say possibly we need to discuss more about that and keep mobility also in topic for discussion. But there even in India and globally, we would only see some 5-10% traction with fuel cell applications also. The whole of hydrogen usage, I'm saying, from that. So we really need to think on, can those existing steel industries, can the existing refineries, can those existing furnaces fuel as hydrogen as in fuel can be used, and what will it take to modify those furnaces or implement anything new where we use hydrogen as fuel. So those were some of thoughts I thought possibly can provide some point of discussions with others as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kapil. Yeah. Narendra, would you like to share your thoughts?
Sure, thanks, Adeshir. And first of all, I'm honored to be part of this panel. I will be making two main points. One is related to the industry academia collaboration, which I think this session is about. and the second one is going to be about the green hydrogen stuff. So I represent NCPRE, the National Center for Photovoltaic Research and Education at IIT Bombay, which was set up in 2010. And solar was at a similar stage in 2010 in India. People were not sure, it was expensive and so on. Green hydrogen, I think it's a kind of similar situation right now. NCPRE has seen this transition of solar being an expensive source of electricity to a commodity in the last 10 years. And we have worked actively with the industry. Just in the last 5 years, we have worked with 30 plus companies. But I feel, the way the academia, especially Indian academia, needs to work with industry, we have to change significantly. For example, the traditional way of a faculty member writing a proposal, getting some grant, then hiring a student, then training, then the student doing something, and then maybe looking for technology transfer, that's not going to work. That's just too slow for today's world. People are already setting up their demonstration plants, and we have to get out of our labs and work in the industry or work on the sites, right? That's not something the IITs are usually used to do. At NCPRE, we have been trying to do that. For example, as we speak, half of my team is actually on different project sites, trying to do various projects with the companies. And in order to do that, the funding agencies have to fund big centers like NCPRE at R&D institutes so that we can hire staff and highly skilled staff, by the way, pay them salaries so that they'll stay with us and they would be able to run with an industry project from day one. All this time of hiring, training, and all has to be shortened significantly. So in order for us to work with industry, that has to happen, and that new mode of the center mode, it's not really new, but it's still new for the Indian academia, and the funding agencies need to realize that that is the way forward and need to encourage those kinds of initiative. The second point which I want to make is about the green hydrogen part. I mean, a lot has been spoken about the hydrogen, but hydrogen, we are discussing green hydrogen because the electricity has become cheap, right? So it's sort of because of solar. So I'm going to talk a little bit about solar now. See, the majority of the cost of green hydrogen is coming from solar, and the solar costs have reduced because of economies of scale, as Kapil mentioned, efficiency improvements, and also one part which people often not talk about is reliability. People are giving out 25 years now, 30-year warranties on their modules, right? So these plants are supposed to last for 30 odd years in Indian climatic conditions, and that's not obvious at all. NCPRE has been conducting these all India surveys, and we have surveyed practically every corner of India. Mr. Eric mentioned about the plant in Kochi. We have been there a few times in last few years. We have also been to the Himalayas, the Hanle and Leh Ladakh solar plants. What we have seen is that the average degradation rate of solar panels in India in hot climates is actually quite high as compared to those in the cold climates. And the current qualification standard, for example, which is being used to deploy, qualify modules and deploy them in India, is not sufficient for Indian or hot climates in general. This IEC 61215 standard is mainly for the moderate climates. And I'm a professor, sorry, so I'm going into the details. I like to do that, but those details are important, especially for India, because now one way to reduce cost of green hydrogen is to improve the life of solar plant. You give 40-year life, and then the LCOE is going to go down. That $4 is going to go down. But on what basis are you going to give that 40-year life to a solar plant? With the current standard and with these hot climates in India, it's a very risky bet, as our data has shown. But there are ways out. For example, we actively work to develop a new standard with IEC to qualify solar panels for hot climates, and it was published in 2020. It's called IEC 63126. Okay, if the panels in India are qualified against that standard, the chances of them surviving in Indian harsh conditions are going to be quite high, and we actively work in this area as well. So anyway, so those were the two major points which I wanted to make, and I'd like to thank Adeshir and Pranavji for giving me this opportunity.
Dr. Saras would be very happy to know that IIT wants to work with industry in a very,
They are already there.
yeah, but to change their way of working as well. So,
And on just a lighter note, I mean, possibly this side is all IIT Bombay.
okay. Can I go to Pada there and
Mr. Panda from NTPC. NTPC, as you know, has taken initiative.
Yeah.
Mr. Panda from NTPC. As we know, NTPC is one of the PSUs which has taken initiative in the field of green hydrogen, and they are highly committed. So I am very happy that he is present here to give his perspective.
Yeah, so respected seniors, friends, colleagues, and I would say hydrogen enthusiasts here. Now, so any transition we talk about, we have been talking it so long, but I broadly say in three parts. One is first coal or gas to renewable, and then mobility from say diesel, petrol to hydrogen or electric. Yeah, and the third is in form of all energy carriers, say methanol or ammonia, or in form of other chemicals. So when you talk about these transitions, and in light of green hydrogen, there are challenges. So like I was introduced being NTPC and taking many pilots, so probably I'll be able to share our concerns in all these areas. In probably a week's time, our first hydrogen filling station in Leh, that would be on. And already we have started making one green hydrogen based microgrid. And another 10 days time, probably our contract process would be completed for blending process, hydrogen into natural gas. Now in all this, there are challenges, but all these challenges can be broadly classified into three parts. One, that price. Everything is costlier. And when you talk about price, I'll give you very interesting dimensions. Last July, we placed a order for 5 megawatt electrolyzer, and it was costing around say 50 crores. And today, it is not even completed 1 year, and as I was told, the price of electrolyzers based on PM technology at least has gone down by 1/4. So whatever is costing us say per megawatt 10 crores, now it is less than 6 or 7 crores. That is one. Now we probably few of you have gone through this article which appeared in 2-3 days back. They say because of with some improvement, breakthrough technology, I would say, the efficiency of electrolyzer has gone up to this extent that whatever you say per kg hydrogen conversion, it requires 50 units of electricity. That has come down to 41 units of electricity. So with all these new technologies, of course, the price would come down. Now, what would help this? The scale of operation. That is what we all are wanting. That is why NTPC has started a few pilot projects. And I take pride in saying that we started green methanol, where we capture carbon from the flue gas, mix with green hydrogen, make green methanol almost 1.5 years back. So all these pilots, when fructified and proven to be sustainable, that would bring the scale not for NTPC but for whole India. That is what we want. And then last dimension is the time. By what time, how fast all this can happen, so that the cost comes down, the scale picks up, and it is commercialized, and then decarbonization in all these three areas are reached faster. And a few of speakers in the first session and now they're talking about the timeline of say at least 1 decade. And we at NTPC, I personally am very hopeful that that will come at 5 years. the way the technology is improving and everyday new technology is coming up, which is unthinkable just a week back. And now those things are possible. And if this goes on, probably what happened in solar, it took 10 years time to reach from per unit rate of 16 rupees down to 2 rupees. Now that will be able to achieved in less than 5 years time. So that's the perspective of NTPC, and these are the challenges. So once we all take up more and more pilot projects, completed them in time, and then the provenness is demonstrated, and then the scale would be picked up. And of course, government is working on the supply side. Now, because of the government, that there will be some mandate on the demand side, and that will be reached even faster. That's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Respected Dr. Saraswat, it was a pleasure when you entered the hall and you set the tone. I was little worried with the discussion which was going on. It was all getting into petroleum versus solar or something like that. Whereas I wanted to ask at that time also, why are we talking about green hydrogen? What is the concern? Out of what? Because of the air pollution, because of the carbon commitments and the whole desire that we want to get away from that. That's the reason that we want to go for green hydrogen. So from that angle, for me, color is important. Green hydrogen is important. So that's the first thing I would like to make the distinction, because otherwise, whatever sources we have, we are going to be killed by the pollution. We are not going to live forever. So that's one thing. Now, saying that, I am a great fond of the Indian government policy for solar, which has shaped the entire renewable energy momentum globally. I have been part of it at the MNRE, then at the Solar Energy Corporation of India, and I saw, still I would like to say, though I also belong to IIT, but I can say honestly that contribution of all our R&D institutions in developing the solar has been only minimal. Is the commercial production techniques, the contribution made by...
Thank you for making a very vocal statement about
it. But it's a fact. And sir, because of the Indian government policy, we set the target at that time 20,000 megawatt. We didn't know how that can be reached. And at that time also the situation was same, 18 rupees tariff, 2 rupees 50 paisa tariff for the thermal power. How do you sell this solar power? Same issues, similar, I think we are standing on hydrogen as well. So for me, the policy is most important. Whether we want to drive the R&D, we want to have the development of technology in the country, or we want to bring the technology from outside. But ultimately, this is the market which drives it, which gives it the wings, how you can do that, how you can reach the cost competitiveness. Saying that, I would just like to say a few words, some of the salient features of the solar. I mean, let us take a step back and see that what good we have done in solar, or for that matter, solar mission. Like, first we tried to scale down. Unlike the European experience, we never, we from the very beginning inbuilt a process of cost competitiveness in the all auction processes, or whatever we say, reverse bidding and all. And at that time, there was no ecosystem. At that time, there was not enough capacity building. So we started with a very nimble footing, I would say. If those who are, tracing the solar development, and I think Mr. Contractor is there, you are a part of that movement, that 5 megawatt was the maximum limit of the capacity of the solar project that you can set up for solar PV. The reason was simple. We didn't have any experience, so we did not want to risk. And today, I think one of the biggest globally capacity is 648 megawatt by Adani in Tamil Nadu. That project is set up a few years back. I think capacity is not the problem now. We have 2000 megawatt kind of project parks and so many parks, so much capacity. So we have gone. Why and how this happened? Because of the government policy. Government set a target, a visibility. Normally, it is said that government of India does not have visibility in the policy, but I think we had quite good visibility. Government of India has been saying, no, we would like to have the solar procurement and all, so that is happening. And I think, so these are the, in my opinion, key things. And at the later end of the solar movement, then we went for the solar park concept. The solar park concept was different because we knew that in India, land is a very touchy issue. How do you get the land? How do the developer get the land? And especially the developer who are coming from abroad, they do not want to get into the messy things of bargaining or finding the land. Then the concept of solar park, where the states were coming with the land, revenue land pooled together, and the center was helping them building up the infrastructure. That paved the way. And I think through that also very substantial amount of capacity has come in. So thankfully, for the, in case of hydrogen also, the green hydrogen policy which is announced on February, it touches some of these issues, like for example, waiver of ISTS charges, that gives you some concessions for the power. Then banking, which is a bigger thing, but I know that because of the international definition, probably that's a questionable thing whether the hydrogen which will be generated through banked energy, that will be called green or not, but still the hydrogen would be there. So, but I think it talks about the dedicated manufacturing zones as well. Of course, details have to come. This is a very, very plus thing. But one thing I think we need to keep our sights on from the very beginning of setting up, manufacturing base in the country if we want to get that leadership. I think that a PLI scheme has come for various things, but still everybody is watching that when that scheme for electrolyzers will come. So that's one of, I think that will be one of the very important thing.
Our recommendation should be.
Yeah. So that should that can be one thing. But now coming to the development and getting that I would say global leadership, getting into that position, I think Professor Contractor, we have been discussing, and right now I am working at Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation as well. And I think based on the discussion what we had with NSEFI also, we are trying to set up a technology platform in Shakti. The main purpose of that would be similar, like we know that a lot of development is happening in the startup companies, through startup companies. How to bring that knowledge to the mainstreaming? So the main idea is that you bring the developer and the, I would say, the main industry together, let them expose what is what have they developed, and let the industry choose if they can. And this should be open to global startup base and all. So those kind of efforts need to be there. I know that international partnership for technology and that is going to play a major role, because we cannot develop technology overnight, and that will take time. That's where the role of academia comes now. How quickly you can get into the mold of adaptation of technologies, how can you prepare the capacity building of the stakeholders, and those kind of things. I again I have one more observation on policy, that given the nascent stage of technology development, it will be imperative for the public sector to support both investments and private sector capacity building. That's important. So that's important. So it means policy has to be inclusive where the industry is there, but I think in the initial phase, some risk has to be covered by the, let us say, the public sector. And then capacity building in the industrial or private sector has to happen so that they can take over later that growth pattern. I think as far as concerned to application areas, that lot has been discussed about that, and I don't have to say anything on that. Only I would like to add one thing, that I have seen some papers, they talk about operational mode of electrolyzers. They say one model is that, for example, if you are using solar as the green source of energy, then during the daytime when solar is produced, only then you can run the electrolyzers, and this is how you can produce. In that case, of course, the economics will be different. Instead of running it 24 hours, another important factor in case of electrolyzers is not only the efficiency but their life. Because I have seen reports, even IEA reports, they talk about, they say today we can take about 20,000 hours the life, but I think they expect it to go up to 80,000 in, of course, by 2040 or 2050. So it means a lot of development is expected that we need to be capable of, and I think a lot of capacity building will be required through this industry academy collaboration that can happen fast. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. And Mr. Bala, I think the ideas of demo plants, and one point you brought up was the idea of creating hydrogen hubs. I don't know if you've seen the whole DOE. Yes, in the US, they're putting $8 billion to create, like solar parks, hydrogen hubs. The industry, academia, everyone works together to prove the point. One for this, one for that, different application. Perhaps Dr. Saraswat, this is something that could be a way to go.
In fact, I did not repeat that point. What he said, the decentralized hydrogen production units. For example, there is a steel plant. I can set up one hydrogen unit there. At the point of use, this can be used, and later on, till we learn the storage and transportation and reduce that cost, so that can be the first movers kind of thing. So, thanks.
Dr. Saraswat, you would like to
Number one, I am very happy to have Dr. Saraswat, whom we had invited, mainly because we are going to talk of policy recommendations, and that is where we can always, it is nice to interact with Niti Aayog. I would like to, based on all the discussions, put this green hydrogen idea into perspective overall. Number one, that when we started on the solar mission in 2008, we started with the idea of making solar energy affordable. That means cost reduction was our main aim. I used to tell all our members that your profit is secondary. Important is to reduce the cost, make it affordable. And I'm very happy that through collective effort of the industry and the government, it is not government alone, it is not industry alone, that we have been able to reduce the cost. Industry has taken the risk, brought the investment, and generated employment.
By the way, which industry?
Solar.
No, which industry? Where is that industry?
Solar industry.
But where is it?
All I am going to name.
He said it. In China. What did you contribute to that? What Indian system contribute for bringing down the cost of solar energy?
Only creating market.
That's all.
Financial engineering.
Sir, today solar energy is a civil contractor's job.
Yes.
It has no technology going.
Yeah, there is no rocket science.
Solar energy today, the full panel comes from China. You put a pillar and you have an electrician who wires it, and that's all the solar industry. Is that the industry you want?
No.
For electrolyzer, is that the industry you want for hydrogen? I
certainly
don't
not.
want at least.
नहीं हमको भी very
Sir,
clear.
please don't, what you have done for solar, for heaven's sake, don't do for hydrogen. But that's all the request I'll say.
Anyway, I will.
See,
I mean, okay.
These are bitter facts of life. Instead of importing crude oil, you are importing solar cells.
Panels, yes.
So what is that did you gain? What did you gain? Your import continues to remain.
There is no denying whatever you say.
So, point what I'm trying to say, don't replicate what we did for solar. Even today, you have just shown me some news items. Reliance is setting up a plant for this, Adani is setting up a plant for this. All this is happening after Government of India has announced the PLI scheme. Why didn't Reliance and Adani and others set up the same plants without these PLI schemes? China did not wait for PLI schemes. Sir, the point is, industry has to take initiative. As far as India is concerned, the R&D, the technology development in the industry is practically nil. If I give today that I think one gentleman said that we should collaborate. I also want to collaborate. But collaboration should not lead to perpetual collaboration. In India, our technology collaboration in the private sector, even in the public sector, is to the extent of that the 52nd fertilizer plant which I am setting up in Talcher, I am still going to Italy and America and all that to get the technology for 52nd plant. Where is my technology that is going into that? Where is my manufacturing setup which is going into that? Where is my designer which is going into that? All of us have made a mess of this country in terms of this private industry going outside, bringing partners and perpetuating collaborations, and not learning how to design, how to set up your own plants. Adani will also do the same thing. They will go and get to some foreign company. Reliance has already purchased some R&D hub in US, and they are going to now bring to that. So this is the way it will continue. What you have spent on. If PLI had not done, even this will not happen. If 45,000 crores worth of company, a company which has a turnover of 45,000 crores, cannot spend 500 crores for doing R&D on an electrolyzer, I think, where are we living?
Okay, number one, absolutely no denying whatever you say. I have been a part of the industry. I only company where I worked, where R&D worked, was Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
That one company
Okay.
has done a good
So
job.
my entire life of 45 years of experience.
So don't get into solar story now. You come to the hydrogen story.
I am coming to hydrogen only. But one thing
solar
is,
story is a bitter
no, one thing is that whether China or not, had cost reduction not taken place, green hydrogen we would not be talking today.
I agree. That globally it is.
That is all that I am saying.
Globally it is.
And I am talking globally only. That the role of green hydrogen, let us understand. Huh? Huh? Huh?
We have to vacate the room. Next event.
Uh-huh.
Finish it up.
I will quickly finish it off with
2 minutes is given.
recommendations. Huh?
Giving 2 minutes.
What is coming? We have to vacate.
We have to vacate the
Oh,
room.
okay. Very bad, very bad. Huh? Okay. So number one is I agree with Dr. Saraswat's all point.
We all agree.
Number one. Number two, that industry, academia, indigenous relationship is important. That is why as NSEFI, we have formed industry academia, which will be headed by Professor Ardeshir Contractor. So that is how we have IIT Bombay here, IIT Delhi also here as part of us. And I am painfully aware that R&D money is not being spent by industry, except my previous employer, Tata Iron. Dr. J.J. Irani is my mentor. So now as far as these things are concerned, let us say that the role of green hydrogen as estimated by IRENA globally is 12% in the energy mix. So we have to, maybe in India 20%, when everything goes well, whatever we have to do. And due to whatever reason, cost reduction in solar was also achieved after 12 to 13 years. So we have to have that kind of patience, that how and try various combinations. So that is how I said that judicious use. And final, let me come to a recommendation that electrolyzers to be produced indigenously with high efficiency and affordable cost should be the direction that we should take. And for that, if any PLI is to be specifically given, yes. We should also give, I had mentioned to the minister, R&D fund. Whatever you give this 19,500 crores of PLI, you do this, do that. But R&D fund also should be equally given. And that is where we are prepared. I am trying to bring industry and academia together. I had told IIT Bombay that you don't sit in ivory towers, and we will, as industry, will interact with you. So R&D is equally important. And 24/7 green energy will be required if you want to really call it green. Then solar, wind, storage, etc. And the point that you mentioned about 90% or through net carbon, that is grid also should be free. And that is all that is the summary.
Sir, only one thing, that this country has to have appetite for doing
Okay, I think other than my emotional outburst, because I have suffered a lot because of the lack of indigenization in our technology, I would recommend the following. We have to do hydrogen. There is no escaping that part. And as I mentioned right in the beginning, let's not add color to it. Let's make hydrogen at affordable cost with minimum impact as far as carbon is concerned. This should be our bottom line. In my opinion, the lowest hanging fruit for that, for production of hydrogen in today's context, in the next 5 years, is coal gasification, because India has a huge reserve of coal. We have developed indigenous technology today by 3 companies in the country, BHEL, Thermax, and IIT Delhi. Today, we can make our own gasifiers. So, coal gasification with carbon capture, which is also done by us today, we can do. In fact, NTPC is doing at Vrindavan. What is that? Vindhyachal. Carbon capture. This is our lowest fruit for producing hydrogen at affordable cost. And it should be supplied to, if they produce it in a pit head, then all the many problems are solved. If they produce it next to the thermal power plant, then the problems are solved. If they produce it next to the steel plant, then it is solved. So this is the low-hanging fruit. Second one is, India has got huge biomass. Biomass to hydrogen is another source which we should recommend, and industry should work on that. Satat program, we are doing biogas today. Instead of biogas alone, and then some people are going to bio-CNG, and now to bio-CNG you are mixing hydrogen coming from refinery or someplace which is maybe green or maybe grey. Why not make hydrogen from that? It will be little costly at the moment because of the supply chain problem of the biomass. But if you take a proper policy decision on supply chain of the biomass, which is that you bring the farmer or the agriculturist as part of your industry sector as a corporation, and he is given the dividend out of this produce, probably you will solve the problem of supply chain. So that is second one. Third one, I fully agree with the cost of electrolyzers will come down because technology is improving. And I agree with him that 52 units which is needed generally is now going to require 42 units. But for that, it is still in the stage of not even proof of concept. It is TRL 3 and less. It's just an experiment which has been done. To TRL 3 to go to 9 will take time. So that is the kind of thing it will have. There's a graphene oxide they are going to use for that. The third point I would like to mention is that for the mobility requirement, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very good solution available. One is, of course, produce green hydrogen from whichever source you can bring. Another one is Type 4 cylinders. Today, one of the Bombay companies, Russell Ford Synergy or somebody, has already made for CNG a Type 4 cylinder, which I think Mr. Maheshwari was talking about, using carbon fiber and inner liner as polymer. I'm sure with certain thing, Indian type 4 cylinders, which has been proven by PESO, can be made use of for storage at 700 bars. The other aggregates you have to do, we should recommend that. The third one is the industry should now work with a foreign partner and try to build all the other transportation and storage, the midstream, what he was talking, they should be done. The main thing is the scale. I saw that nice one. Omium is really setting up a good plant for electrolyzer. I think if the scale is reached and we are able to do it with maximum localization, then it will be our great thing that will happen. And last point I would like to mention here is that for automobile purpose, what I mentioned earlier, answer lies in reforming the ammonia or methanol into hydrogen and then running a fuel cell. Now coming to fuel cell, already there is a collaboration between H2E company in Pune. Has anybody there? Siddharth Maurya or somebody there? Nahi, they are already collaborating with Germany and they have very good localization they have done today for a solid oxide fuel cell and solid oxide electrolyzer. I think this is the kind of work, while he is collaborating, but his localization is also taking place, which reduces our import thing. This is what I would like to do for Adani's and Ambani's when they do. They should reduce the kind of, like Maruti did for us in. Today, Maruti has done the maximum localization in the automobile sector. I want that to happen in electrolyzers, that to happen in fuels. I am nothing against, but tomorrow it should not be that a good company like Vikram Solar or Bears and Moyer, which are manufacturing solar cells once upon a time with indigenous technologies, most of it, particularly the Hyderabad company Indo Solar was indigenous technology, got closed because of the Chinese dumping, because we did not put the right technology. So this should not happen in the electrolyzer case tomorrow. This should not happen. So industrial policy will be to support the indigenous production, and I want to tell you, our Atmanirbhar scheme is purely in that direction, which will support any industry which is going to come up with this kind of a thing, will be supported by our Prime Minister. That much I can assure you. I think this is what we will do, and we should work industry, academia collaboration, no doubt about it. Without that, we cannot work. But that collaboration should be not that the industry does not invest anything on that. I have seen lot of alumni are spending money in the IITs, buildings, big buildings they are making. But R&D needs money for doing R&D. You should invest in R&D. The industry should also invest in R&D. Why I am saying that industry should spend, I will give an example. When I was doing this coal gasification, I wanted Thermex to put in some money, which was very difficult for them to invest money. So I had to get entire money from the government. This should not happen. 20% you put, 30% you put in that R&D scheme, it will help the problem. But industry, whether it is a 500 crore industry or it is a 5,000 crore industry, refuses to put money in R&D, which is what is not the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I would now like to request Professor Adishir Contractor to kindly give away a small token of our appreciation to the panelists. First to Mr. Kapil Maheshwari, then to Dr. Akshini Kumar, and Dr. Narendra Shiradkar, to Dr. Ashwini Kumar, and then Mr. Panda from NTPC. I would request Dr. Contractor to also present a small plan to Dr. Saraswat too.